This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast, Chris Graham, Rod Mullins. We're going to talk some NASCAR. And Rod, let's start with the fun race this past weekend at the Glen. Chase Elliott gets the win. A little bit of controversy, I guess. It's not NASCAR if there's not. So take us through Chase Elliott getting that first big win this past weekend.
Well, I've said it before. I don't know how many weeks I had said over and over, Chase Elliott looks like he could come up with a win. But he finally came up with a win on Sunday, but just barely. He could have lost it on that last lap as he got a little bit squirrely coming out of the turn and so did Martin Truex Jr. And, I was with bated breath the entire time watching the final laps countdown of the final 32 laps, if you want to call it that, of the Go Bowling at the Glen race at Watkins Glen. I can't say enough about the way that Chase Elliott has been driving so far, and especially what he did this past Sunday. I mean, he just came out, he just waited on the line, he did what he was supposed to do, and, when that wheel hop happened, he was scared, at first, but he did something that I think that is kind of proof of an experienced driver. It's not that sophomore sort of thing, but he started the wheel hop, he knocked it out of gear in order not to spin out, but he had enough of a gap where he was able to go and pull that out, hold it together, and then get right there at the very end. Kyle Busch, though, of course, probably had the better car of the day, even though Martin Truex was chasing Chase Elliott down there toward the end of the race. Kyle Busch probably had a better car on the day, but according to him, he could have at least given him a run before it was over with, but I don't think so. I think that this was just meant to be. It was going to happen. I was just happy to see that Chase Elliott picked up his first NASCAR win, and especially his first NASCAR win, and of all things, his 99th start. Isn't that kind of a coincidence when you've got the number 9 on your car? It's the 99th start. You pick up your first win, and you also pick up win 250 for Hendrick Motorsports.
So what does this win mean for Chase Elliott? Yeah, you're right, Rod. We've been talking about him all season long. It felt like it was just inevitable he was going to break through, but of course, it took this, took the Herculean effort this past weekend. So what does this mean for him now? Both short term, heading into the chase, but also, maybe a guy like him gets this win. It's sort of like the lid comes off sometimes for guys like this. So could this have long-term repercussions as well?
Well, of course, you mentioned it. He's in the playoffs. He's already qualified. He's jumped in. He's got into the playoffs. One win. The same as Austin Dillon there, as Austin picked up the win at the Daytona 500 back in February. But, again, it opens up the door for him to be able to do some things coming up. And we've got Michigan coming up this week. Michigan was always a good track for his dad, for Bill Elliott, and we're going to talk about Bill Elliott getting back into racing here in just a little bit, but I'm sure that Father Bill is going to give Chase a lot of advice going into the Michigan race this coming weekend. And then, of course, you have Bristol, and he's done well at Bristol when he has raced there, and he has stayed out of trouble. That's the big one right there. But I think what's going to really set the stage, we could see him, of all things, if he ran as good as he did this past weekend, we might see a great performance out of him come the first part of September with Darlington coming around the turn, and then besides that, you've got the Brickyard race, and he's been pretty good at racetracks similar, if you want to call them that, to the Brickyard. So, you're right. He could blow the lid off of this, and he could maybe pick up another 2 or 3 wins and position himself very well going into the playoff chase by the time that all these races end coming up in September.
Okay, so you hinted towards it. Let's talk about it now. Wild Bill from Dawsonville, Bill Elliott, for a driver in an Xfinity Road America event. So give us this news.
Well, I was a little bit surprised with this one because I don't know if he just felt like Bill felt like Chase was getting all the press out of this big win and everything. The DMS racing officials announced just here in the last couple of days that Bill Elliott is going to drive a Chevy Camaro at Road America for the Xfinity Series race. It's the Johnsonville 180. But now there's a connection with this. Bill Elliott is racing not only just to, I guess, have a little bit of fun out of this, but He is also racing for his longtime crew chief and best friend, you could call him a best friend, Mike Dean. Mike Dean was with him back in the old days when they were with the Coors Melling Ford, and then he even moved up to the crew chief when he was with Junior Johnson racing the McDonald's car. So Beam and Elliott have worked together in the past, so it's going to be a good opportunity for Bill Elliott to kind of get behind the wheel, still kind of demonstrate that he's still got the ability to race and drive. And I think it's going to be an interesting thing. And by the way, for those wondering about what kind of connection does Mike Beam have with this, he is the president of GMS Racing, and he says he's thrilled to death to be getting the Dawsonville, Georgia natives back in. He's had 43 Xfinity Series starts, 1 win. He's had 8 top 5 finishes. He's done pretty well while he's been in the Xfinity Series. Let's see what he can do, and we'll find out what he does when they have that race coming up.
Some more off-the-track news, not of a fun nature to talk about. Brian France arrested. Circumstances, I'm sure a lot of NASCAR fans out there have obviously been following the story, takes a leave of absence. The latest on this, and Rod, your perspective on this as well.
Well, the latest on this now is he has taken an indefinite leave of absence from NASCAR. So an update as it was issued a little bit later on, he said in a quote statement, "I apologize to our fans, our industry, and my family for the impact of my actions. Effective immediately, I will be taking an indefinite leave of absence from my position to focus on my personal affairs." And NASCAR issued a very similar statement, and Executive Vice President Jim Branch with the family, he has taken over the role of interim chairman and chief executive officer. And it's not really a big surprise. There's been a lot of people who have said for years and years upon end that Brian France has played the role a little bit more of a playboy, so to speak, with NASCAR than what his father, Bill France Jr., used to. Bill France Jr. and Big Bill France Sr., they were the get your hands dirty, just, get down in the grit and everything else. You talk to the drivers as firm as you could possibly do without them, thinking you're taking advantage of them or anything like that. You knew where you stood with the France family, especially with Big Bill and then with Bill Jr. But when Brian France took over after Bill France Jr. stepped down, and of course his ultimate death, Brian France just really, to me, has, I don't know, my own personal opinion is he has kind of loosely ran this organization. More so for the fact of just let's just kind of satisfy the fans out there, and let's just kind of change things, and let's kind of go along. He's kind of been that leader up there at the top that you kind of wonder, does he really effectively have any power, or is it people down below him that runs the entire operation? This whole thing has come out, and what's really got me is NASCAR is so firm and so tight on this whole thing about substance abuse, whatever the case may be. And he was in possession of a controlled substance, and he was driving intoxicated the other night. My question is, should NASCAR go, even though he's the owner, he is supposed to be the face of this sport, so to speak, should he go and have to have the same punishment applied to him that he applies to one of the drivers or one of the crew when they go and they abuse a substance or something, and that is they kick them out of the sport until they go through some kind of substance abuse kind of training policy or whatever the case may be. I wonder if Brian France, he's laid the law down, or at least the organization has laid the law down. Who's going to be willing to step up and say to Brian France, if you're willing to save this sport, if you're willing to save the sport that your family established, are you going to go, are you going to leave NASCAR and then make your bid to try to cut back a little bit later on? If you can get all of your boats in a row in the harbor, we're going to have to wait and see about that.
Well, and I would throw in the question, too, in the context of what we're going through in college football, Ohio State, Urban Meyer, the very successful coach at Ohio State, he's won championships there, championships at Florida. And now there's a question about whether or not he'll even be the coach of that team because of questionable decisions in his leadership position. Is this the kind of thing, Rod, do you think that, this could lead to Brian France sort of, just being completely jettisoned away from NASCAR, lose the job, and have someone else in the family take over and Brian France is gone? Do you think it's to that extent? Do you think that's a remote possibility with this?
It could be. I mean, I think so because, again, like I mentioned earlier, I think he has been more of the kind of the face, so to speak, on that podium, kind of speaking for NASCAR. But I believe other people have run the operation underneath him. One person in it that I can mention that has run the operation, or essentially runs the operation, so to speak, and passes all these rules and regulations down, only to have it approved or not approved by the higher ups, has been Mike Helton. And Mike Helton has ran NASCAR for several years. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't just go and elevate Mike Helton into a position like this. I know it was kind of sudden and everything, but that might be a possibility before this whole season thing is over with. I just can't, in my mind, with Brian France, he's gone through already. He's already been through, from what I understand, a very nasty divorce. And it's been hushed up. It's been one of those things where the family hasn't wanted to talk about it. It's not got out in the media. Reminds me a lot of many years ago when Jeff Gordon and his wife, they divorced. There wasn't a whole lot said about it, although she had made mention at one time or another. She could blow the lid off the top of NASCAR with some of the things that she knew. Now, no one knows where she's at. I don't even know where his wife, Brooke, former ex-wife, Brooke, is now. So, I mean, this is another thing. Will this be something that is just kind of swept under the rug, or will this be like what you're talking about with Urban Meyer? Will they force him to step down? To me, this is serious. I mean, you could say with someone out there, this has happened. They've been drinking. They got caught with a controlled substance. Yeah, throw the book at them. But this is supposed to be the face of an organization, a company like NASCAR that is supposed to promote safety. You've got to have sober. You've got to have people that are not taking any kind of drugs, because safety is the name of the game here. But yet you're caught in the Hamptons and you're drinking. You run a stop sign and you have a controlled substance in your vehicle. Yeah, mistakes can happen, but, if he's drinking, driving while intoxicated, criminal possession of that controlled substance, you know what? Maybe it's time that they throw the book at it. Maybe he deserves to get a little bit of punishment out of it instead of it being swept under the rug.
Yeah, it's a black eye on the sport, on the business all at once. No question about that. So let's go now. So that's bad NASCAR news that folks heard about. A story from the website Jalopnik, which I read occasionally, about, I guess this was about a specific way that teams cheat or get around the rules, however you want to call it. And there's a lot of things that we've been talking about. I think I love these stories when we do them on the podcast. But the new inspection system and teams figuring their way out around it with paint schemes. Did you read the story, Rod? And I wanted to get your perspective on just another way, from an engineering perspective, that teams are trying to figure out how to get a little faster and get some competition edge.
Well, I'm not surprised by this. This shows innovative minds. This shows innovation. Yes, and I know it may come up with the fact of cheating and the way it's presented as cheating. Chad Knaus has been in trouble several times with NASCAR for cheating on certain things, the way that maybe the engine was done. But we're talking about here with the body. We're talking about things that being able to run the car through now what is a new inspection system that started at the beginning of the season. It replaced its old laser scanner with a new system that makes a 3D heat map of a car. Then it compares it to a scan that's legal under the rule book. Now, NASCAR has told the drivers and told the car owners that the system would be far more thorough than the last, and it seems to be at least any given race this year. But, Chris, it really isn't surprising that you see more than a dozen or so cars of a 40-car field fail inspection. They have failed inspection on a number of different issues this past year, and as a matter of fact, 13 cars failed at Pocono in July, and they're starting to question whether, how far can this thing go with this squeezing thing. But these are things that you can't notice, I guess, with the human eye, so to speak. And what I'm saying about that is, okay, so your car might be the legal length, but the way that the sheet metal was put on, it might be just a fraction of a millimeter or something like that off in the back. And usually when it goes through and you would take those templates and put down on the cars, you could go and you could say, okay, we're a little bit out of whack here. So they would tell the teams, go back, take a file, kind of file that off, and or kind of trim this off a little bit, and then file it down, redo it. That should take care of it. So we're talking about more innovation with this because these teams are starting to bend the rules just a little bit more. They're showing up at the track with black trim along their paint schemes. But now the thing is, it's just not for loose anymore. And then the running trim down the side skirts, all of these things are designed to kind of dig out that scanner's effectiveness for these teams to be able to get away with more tweaks in the car body. And I looked at the article. I saw some of the designs, the way that they had some of the different paint schemes and so forth. And yes, you can see some subtle changes here and there with the way things are. And most notably are just the designs, especially on the front, the air dam, and then on the sides too. And that's some of these things in order for them to be able to just slip some things by, and they won't be, well, they're hoping that they won't be caught, that this new laser system is catching some people.
You know, I'm reading that article and I read a couple other articles related to this. You know, things like having windshield wipers and using them on dry days, and now NASCAR's had to deal with that issue because some people figured that maybe that gave them some sort of a slight aerodynamic advantage. There's a part, and a lot of this too, somebody does something like the paint scheme thing, and other people say, hey, he's doing it, maybe there's an advantage there. So whether or not it's actually creating an advantage, it's certainly giving people something to think about back in the garage, and they're all looking for just that sliver of something that can give them not even a mile per hour advantage, because the races are so tight, the margins are so small that little bit of advantage can add up to a lot over a 500-mile race. And boy, it's fascinating just to think about this. The fans, when you're watching the racers out there and your strategy and everything else, there's strategy going on all the time, all week long, trying to find just something they could do to cut a couple milliseconds off and win a race. It's so fascinating to think about that, and these kind of articles make you think about that.
Well, and I think I mentioned here a couple of podcasts ago about the fact of a question coming up about a caved-in back windshield. Nothing was ever done about that. I mean, we never did hear anything else about it. And then it's even going to the degree of sketchy stuff going on during the television broadcast. Okay, you go through, you get your car through inspection, it makes it through perfect. But in order to kind of fudge just a little bit more on it, they're going and, as they put it, body slamming their own cars. They may go and they may make a bump up against it or something. They know strategically where it needs to be. Maybe a little bit of a dent needs to be put in there, some kind of a little bend or something. But it's enough to where it may give them a little bit more of an advantage when it comes to aerodynamics, for example. So this is a constant game. I think the article said this plain and simple. This is a constant game of tag you're in with the people who make the rules, and we're going at this part of where you go, you're tagged, and then you find a way to change it, and then you run back on the person and say, now, tag, you're in. Now, change and see what you can do to adjust to this problem.
It's an ongoing thing, and it's cat and mouse. It feels like Boris and Natasha from Rocky and Bullwinkle show, because they're always doing it, and the inspectors know they're doing it. They're just trying to figure out how to stop it for now. But it's tag you're in. That's a great way to put it. So now let's get ready for Michigan, and so Chase Elliott gets to win at the Glen. We're getting closer and closer to the chase. Get us ready for Michigan, Rod.
I love Michigan. Michigan is one of those Roger Penske tracks. It's just, he had that track built. It's one of those huge tracks that's out there that's in the rolling hills, the what they call the Irish Hills. I think the Irish Hills or something in Michigan. People love that track up there. I mean, it's just incredible what you can do when you spend enough time with it, as Penske and some of his group with the Speedway corporations and everything and put this track together. It's always one of these most pivotal tracks in the season of where you will see somebody really jump to the front really quickly and then maybe dominate. We usually have a race sometime when they roll around in the spring and they race at Michigan. They may be racing on the fastest speed, the fastest car that's out there. We may get to this race coming up here for August and find out this race may be decided by none other than gas mileage or fuel mileage out of the whole thing. And, of course, the same rules are going to apply of how the rounds are going to go and so forth. But this is going to be the telltale sign, depending on how the weather is going to be, humidity, how all these other things kind of coalesce together. We're going to find out if the track speed, along with the way that pit road will be, you'll find out whether or not these teams will be able to survive and make it through with maybe not that last-minute pit stop, but they'll try to get through on what they can with what they have the fuel mileage themselves and try to squeeze it all the way through till the end of the race. I mean, look, this past weekend it happened on the road race, and Mark Truex Jr. ran out of gas on that last lap, and then, of all things, here came Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott ran out of gas before Jimmy Johnson came in and pushed him all the way into the pits. So we're starting to see a little bit more of some gas mileage things, and that'll decide this race, I believe, more than anything else.
That, folks, is Rod Mullins. He gets you ready for NASCAR each week here on Augusta Free Press. And, of course, he has the big races in Bristol coming up in a couple of weeks. But for now, Rod, thanks for your time.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.